First things first, I'm not a Conjuring super fan by any means. Before this year, the only film out of the 10 I had seen was the first Conjuring film. However, this summer I set out to watch all The Good, the Bad, and La Llorona in preparation for what they're marketing as the final chapter of the saga, The Conjuring Last Rites. Now that I've seen all 10, including The Last Rites, and I feel like I have enough takes to rank this goofy, box office dominating franchise, I would definitely place this series in guilty pleasure territory for me. With that in mind, let's get started with my ranking of all of the Conjuring films. And be sure to put your personal rankings in the comments below so we can discuss. Starting with number 10, my least favorite Conjuring film. It may shock you, we have number 10, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. In my opinion, the third Ed and Lorraine focused film is the most offensively bad entry in the franchise. In my watch through, I was pleasantly surprised at how solid The Conjuring 2 was, so in 3, how quickly the worst parts of the spin-off films infected the main series' story in this film was pretty disappointing.
I have chicken shit on my hands.
The second Conjuring film's narrative is driven by Lorraine having a premonition of Ed's death at the hands of Miss Valak. It wasn't the best plot device, but it did its job in a film that had a lot more to offer. But in The Devil Made Me Do It, they reused that plot device as a new demon is threatening Ed, and Lorraine must do everything in her power to save her husband. Meanwhile, a man murders his landlord while possessed by a demon, and we get to see the riveting horrors of the judicial system. All in all, The Devil Made Me Do It was an enormous letdown in my watch through, and manages to be worse than the next two entries on this list, which is really saying a lot. Number 9. The Curse of La Llorona. The Curse of La Llorona's advertising walked the line of calling this film an official entry in the Conjuring universe. But when it was released and featured a character from Annabelle, the implication that this was a story within that universe was very clear. However, perhaps since this film is almost universally disliked, the film is now generally considered to not be a part of the universe, but I don't care. It clearly deserves to be a part of this franchise ranking, since it was the directorial debut of Michael Chaves, who has now directed 4 films in this franchise, some for better and some for worse. Anyways, The Curse of La Llorona is based on the figure within Latin American folklore, La Llorona, but inexplicably follows an American family in California and fails to do the real Llorona justice. As Yolanda Machado put it in a review for The Wrap, writers Tobias Iaconis and Mickey Dautry clearly have no connection to Latino folklore, as they give a beat-by-beat explanation of who she is, Cliff Notes style. They don't dare dive deeper into who La Llorona was, the deep patriarchal roots that created her and the history surrounding her, and the way Latino parents have used her story as a way to lovingly traumatize their children into obeying them. Not to mention, the writers take a very hollowed mythos that connects every Latino culture in some way. Each country has their own version of La Llorona, though the Mexican tale is by far the most common, and then center their story on a white woman. That's a big problem. Besides butchering a well-known piece of Latin American folklore, the film doesn't do a lot to make the movie worthwhile, ending up like a forgettable footnote in this franchise whose only thrills come in the form of predictable jump scares. The first scene with the kids in the car is some solid shit, but the quality drop-off afterwards is severe. Shout out Linda Cardellini though, it wasn't your fault. Number 8. Annabelle. Annabelle ranks above the worst of the worst because it's hard to do a lot of offensively bad things when barely anything happens in the movie, and that certainly is the case for 2014's Annabelle. For starters, the doll itself is hardly in the film, and its main characters, John and Mia, are unmemorable at best. The film largely relies on haunted house movie tropes, but doesn't do anything to differentiate them. I almost want to rank it lower for being so dull, but then I remember the crimes of The Conjuring 3 and La Llorona, and there is a lot more disdain in my heart for those two films, and Annabelle frankly takes up no space in my mind, heart, or soul. So let's move right along. Number 7. The Nun. 2018 gave us The Nun, an origin story to Valak, the demon who threatened the Warrens in The Conjuring 2, who commonly takes the form of an iconically ghoulish nun played impeccably by Bonnie Aarons. Being an origin story, this film is pretty exposition heavy and at times a bit tedious and repetitive. Like the first Annabelle film, it also relies on tropes of the franchise and genre without making too many of its own choices. However, there are a couple decent spooks and visuals here and there, if you can make them out through the darkness. And the film's setting does deliver a uniquely gothic atmosphere with some comparatively decent main characters in Sister Irene and Frenchie, who truly I could see the vision of them reaching Ed and Lorraine heights if they had better writing. Number 6. The Conjuring Last Rites. I didn't have the highest hopes for The Conjuring 4, but as it's been advertised with the tagline, "The Case That Ended It All," I can't help but to feel disappointed that the Ed and Lorraine saga ended with an excruciatingly slow whimper. Despite this, it's not entirely a misfire. In the movie's favor, Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson are still charismatic as ever, and especially costumed down for the gods in this one, and new additions Ben Hardy and especially Mia Thompson as Judy Warren are definitely welcome to the mix. The CGI-heavy horror sequences were not my favorite in this one, but I can't lie, one particular scene did make me particularly on edge as an emetophobic person. But of course, as with all of these movies post-2013, the writing is severely lacking, and a lot of the film's dramatic tension is hinged on questions that remain unanswered in an anticlimactic finale that doesn't focus on solving the actual haunting at hand. And oh my goodness, this one did not need to be this long. These are just my first reaction thoughts on The Last Rites, so if you want me to do a more in-depth review, definitely let me know in the comments below. Number 5. Annabelle Comes Home. Annabelle Comes Home has so much potential in my opinion, but ends up being a bit underwhelming despite having a lot of fun along the way. The film follows Judy Warren, Ed and Lorraine's daughter from the first 2 films, as she has some friends over while her parents are away who end up unleashing Annabelle from her case and thus also releasing all of the dark spirits she attracts. Ed and Lorraine even have like 10 minutes of screen time in this film, so sounds like a lot of fun, right? Honestly, this movie is so close to achieving what it's trying to do. The characters, they're one-dimensional, but engaging enough. The tone is starkly different and a lot of fun, and the Warren household is used in a lot of creative ways. Honestly, this movie is just a bit of a letdown when it comes to horror and delivering memorable scares or creatures. The movie features ghosts like the Bride, the Black Shuck, among others, but at this point in the franchise, I want some new, scary, iconic, memorable monsters to look at. The ones in this film, however, feel like something out of a haunted house in a fair. I wish the antagonists in this film were on the level of Valak's various forms, and then I really think I could see Annabelle Comes Home being a highlight in the franchise. Number 4. The Nun 2. Much like the Annabelle sequels, I was pleasantly surprised by The Nun 2, which continues the story of Sister Irene and Frenchie, aka Maurice, from the first film. Story-wise, it's a bit of a retread of the first Nun film, just swap the blood of Christ for the eyes of St. Lucy, but the film does a lot of fun things visually. The performances range from decent to solid, and it surpasses the bar of at least being an entertaining movie. What I loved about it was the film goes for several striking images and large set pieces, and most of them are successful, while some admittedly could use a little work. I particularly liked the sequence with Irene wandering through some foggy European streets, as it was giving Don't Look Now, and I thought they could have played with that reference a little more, but the scene actually ends up in a gratuitous sequence with a magazine stand, but despite its excessiveness, I actually loved this. This moment, and some other moments throughout this one, really show director Michael Shavs having a lot more confidence in this film. Thaisa Farmiga as Irene definitely gets to do more with her performance in this movie, but there were also moments where I wish she'd amp up the intensity to really sell the stakes of a demon possessing your man crush and the literal devil chasing children right around the corner. Oh yeah, this film also has the literal devil running around a monastery, which is certainly one of the better aspects of the film's messy third act, which I think mostly suffered due to its editing. In fact, I think a lot of this film could have been improved with better editing choices. There are several moments where the editing just takes you out of the immersion of the moment. Instead of letting a shot linger, they're cutting back and forth to reaction shots and kind of ruining the intensity of several moments. And for goodness sakes, you don't need to explain what's going on in the climax of your film while using 50 different flashbacks from this movie and other movies. Sometimes these excessive flashbacks are done as a way to make up for bad writing, but I honestly think the climax would have worked just fine without all of the flashbacks, and this choice was probably just another instance of producers or executives thinking the movie is too confusing for casual audiences, and thus these types of sequences make the final cut. But if you can overlook those occasional egregious editing choices, The Nun 2 was a big step up from the previous entry. And like the second Annabelle film, it also uplifts the story of the first film. Number 3, Annabelle Creation. Annabelle Creation has a lot of things going for it, characters you care about, all the spooks and jump scares you would expect from a Conjuring film, and a really cool spooky farmhouse as well. The standouts here are its characters as well as some well-executed set pieces that amplified some of the film's tense moments involving the demon latched on to Miss Annabelle. The film's main character, Janice, is the best part of the film, and a lot of the film's strongest moments center around her, but the rest of the cast also hold their own, making this a perfectly acceptable prequel to a prequel. It checks all the boxes of a Conjuring movie. However, for me, I take a little bit of issue with it because it shares a bit too many similarities with the first Conjuring film, minus any character to parallel the Warrens. That said, this is a perfectly fine entry in the universe that rightfully has a lot of fans, and it is the most complete and satisfying of the Annabelle spin-offs. Number 2, The Conjuring 2. None of these films are perfect 5-star Best Picture moments, but these first two James Wan directed Conjuring films really are a lot of fun, and The Conjuring 2 takes the series into a lot of unexpected territories. For starters, we're in England now, where a new family is facing a new spirit, that of an old man who is spooky in his own right. The Warrens take a bit more of a center stage role in this one, but the star of this movie is Miss Valak, who also takes form as the nun and the Crooked Man only in this film, and each of those alter egos are all great antagonists in their own right, and they each have some great moments in the film. The movie begins by making the historical connection of the Warrens to the real Amityville horror case canonical in this universe, and it's an interesting starting point that the film quickly glazes over. Of course, there are some unbelievable moments of characters making terrible decisions using horror movie logic. Even the Warrens fall victim to that in this film, but all in all, The Conjuring 2 surprised me on my watch through with how solid it is. It's a really entertaining and atmospheric Christmas, yes I said Christmas, horror film that was inexplicably released in June. Number 1, The Conjuring. Say what you want about The Conjuring borrowing from other haunted house films, but through its exceptional casting, inventive scares, and great direction, James Wan and company delivered a well-executed haunted house flick. There's a lot of classic horror scenes and moments in this film, and of course the introduction of the spin-off spawning Annabelle doll, and also the ghost of Bathsheba Sherman, whose name isn't quite as catchy, but I'm sure you remember her face. When I was 14, this movie was the perfect amount of scary, and even now, the film and its scares hold up. This is in large part thanks to director James Wan, as well as the exceptional casting of a modern Amityville family, and of course, Vera Farmiga and Patrick Wilson as Lorraine and Ed Warren, who of course are the true stars of this 10-film franchise. Congratulations, you have made it to the end of my Conjuring ranking. If you're new here, my name is Skyler Gaetano. I'm make videos on your favorite horror movies and TV shows, so make sure you're subscribed and be sure to drop your Conjuring rankings in the comments. The Conjuring franchise has grossed over $2 billion worldwide, so I fear the rumors of it being over with last rites are greatly exaggerated, and we'll certainly be seeing more of this universe with or without Ed or Lorraine. Throughout the 10 films so far, the franchise consistently delivers great atmosphere through its production design, makeup work, and special effects work, as well as standout performances by the Farmigas, Patrick Wilson, Jonas Bloquet maybe, and Bonnie Aarons, of course. Like I said before, the franchise is a guilty pleasure of mine, but if they just stopped pumping these out every year and focused on a quality end product from screenplay to the editing bay, then perhaps one day they can reach the heights of the original 2013 movie. With that, check out my ranking of American Horror Story while you're here, and I will see you next time.